I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to sleep on your bed. I was just so tired and I just sat down on the bed without even knowing when I fell asleep. Please, it would never happen again, Vivian said, her voice shaking, her heart thumping so hard she thought he would hear it. She felt like she had done the worst thing a person could do. Simeon just stood there without saying anything. He didn't shout at her, nor did he frown at her. He just watched her, like he was trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. Vivian had never been so embarrassed in her life like this. And believe me, she thought she had already lived through the worst moments. But this was different. Vivian was a 28-year-old beautiful, smart, and hardworking lady who was trying to survive through life. But life hasn't been kind to her. She was barely holding her life together. She had been thrown out of her home because she couldn't pay her rent on time. Ever since then, she had been trying to find shelter, sometimes sleeping at her workplace or at church premises. Life wasn't like this for Vivian before. She has never imagined her life would be like this. She used to have a home, a life she thought she controlled. But now, everything has changed. Vivian had been married before to her ex-husband, Michael, a man she had loved more than anything. Their life has been, at least she thought it was. But slowly, after 3 years, things started to happen. They tried everything possible to have a child of their own, but nothing worked. Doctors would tell them both that they're fine, yet Vivian couldn't conceive. And that's when everything changed. Michael's mother would come around sometimes, pretending to be niece to her when Michael was around, but really, she was cruel. She would bring other women around for Michael to choose, hinting at how barren Vivian was, and call her names she could never forget. Michael tried at first to ignore her mom. He tried to support Vivian, to protect her. But slowly he changed too. Vivian didn't know if it was his mother's pressure or his own frustrations, but he stopped being the man she had married. One night while they were discussing, she suggested they adopt a child. But he refused so harshly she could barely breathe. Children are a gift from God. We just have to be patient. I cannot call another person's child my own, he said, and he stormed out, leaving her alone with nothing but questions and heartbreak. That night, Michael met a woman named Princess. She was beautiful, tall, and stunning, and she was alone. She noticed him struggling to focus at the bar, and she offered to sit with him. At first, Michael refused. He wasn't looking for company, but she persisted. And finally, he gave in. They started talking, drinking casually. It seemed harmless at first, but at some point, Michael began to feel tipsy, and when it was time to leave, he wanted to go home. But Princess suggested one more shot. Just one more, she said. He agreed, even though he felt the buzz already. By the time they wanted to leave, he was barely able to walk straight. Princess didn't know where he lived, so she offered to take him to her place. When they arrived, she helped him onto her bed. I mean, he was drunk and vulnerable. While trying to cover him up with a duvet, at that moment, they crossed a line he shouldn't have. Michael draws her to himself, and what happened between them that night? It was the betrayal that would break Vivian's heart. Vivian discovered it weeks later by accident. She was trying to use Michael's phone one day, and that's when she saw the messages. Princess had called, insisting to see him, revealing that she was pregnant, and Michael was the father. Vivian froze. Her mind was racing at this point. She couldn't believe Michael could do this to her. She had loved him. She had trusted him. But seeing the proof, realizing what had actually happened, it was too much for her to bear. He has already moved on emotionally. After a month of trying to process the betrayal and everything going on, because you till this time, Michael hasn't said anything. Vivian went to her lawyer to file for a divorce. Michael tried to stop her, to talk her out, but her mind was made up. She couldn't stay with a man who had abandoned their marriage, who had betrayed her completely. She had no choice but to move on, leaving the life she had built with Michael behind, determined to rebuild and survive on her own. Vivian moved on eventually. She had to. When the divorce was finalized, she left her home, her life, everything she had known. She decided to move to a new city, determined to rebuild, to survive. And that was how she got a cleaning job. With me, Simeon. Simeon was a 38 years old, young, successful billionaire who owns a plumbing company. He was smart, kind, hard-working, and handsome in a way that is easy to tell, even from a far distance. He was the type of man that doesn't talk too much or tries to impress anyone. But once you look at him properly, you'll know this is a man who has seen life. I mean, nothing about him looked careless. Everything he has was legally worked for. But life hasn't been soft on him either. Simone almost got married once. And that was the part many people didn't know about him. He once loved a woman so deeply and was ready to settle down with her. But just like that, it ended. The woman he wanted to marry told him one day that he was too nice and soft for her liking. According to her, he did everything she wanted, however she wanted it, and somehow that became the problem. She said she needed adventure, maybe just say no to me sometimes, don't do everything I want. She needed a fight and, I'm sorry, I can't marry you, Simeon. At least not like this, she said. I mean, imagine being told that loving someone properly is not enough. At this point, he didn't even know what most women truly wanted anymore. If being kind wasn't enough, then what was? So he stopped trying to prove himself. Cleaning Simeon's house wasn't really a difficult job, but it was good enough to ease her mind from the pain she was going through, and it kept her going. She worked 3 days a week, ran his errands, and did her best to keep her head down and her dignity intact. Until one day, everything was going well. She has been running errands, cleaning, and her legs were beginning to get sore, her body screaming for rest. By the time she reached the bedroom to tidy it, she was so exhausted that she just sat down, just for a moment, and it wasn't long. Her eyes started closing, and then the next thing she knew, she was asleep. And then the worst thing happened. Vivian had never been in a situation like this before. Her first thought when she woke up to see him standing there was, he's going to fire me. She panicked, words spilling out of her mouth like they had a life of their own. And yet, Simeon didn't say anything. He just stood there, like he was trying to decide something. And that scared her even more. After what felt like an eternity, he finally asked her to leave the room. She nodded quickly, muttering something she wasn't even sure she said clearly, then left the room as fast as she could without running. Her heart was still pounding, but relief filled her. Somehow she had survived the worst moment of her week, maybe even her life. But this was different. Later that evening, as she was in the kitchen, cleaning up the last of the dishes, she couldn't stop thinking about Simeon. Why didn't he yell when he saw me in his bed? Why did he not react the way she expected? Was it a pity, or was it something else entirely? Vivian thought about everything she had been through in her life. The marriage, the betrayal, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the constant feeling of being unwanted. And she realized that no one had ever looked at her like Simeon had just now. But the thought made her uneasy. What did he think? She didn't know what to say at this point. Or maybe that was the point. The days that followed after that, Vivian found herself avoiding his gaze. She didn't want to seem nervous because she was embarrassed. And Simeon noticed it. She could tell. She didn't know what he was thinking, but she could feel his eyes on her sometimes. Just for a moment before she quickly looked away. And in that glance, she felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't say anything at first, didn't bring it up, but she could sense the awareness. He knew she was exhausted, carrying invisible burdens, and maybe he was beginning to care about her. She wasn't ready to let herself think about it, so she continued working, kept her head down, and tried to act normal. But every time she walked past him, her heart would jump, and she felt that same mix of fear and curiosity she had felt the first day he caught her. And then one evening, as she was finishing up her work, Simeon asked her to come sit down. She was surprised. Her first thought was, oh no, here it comes. He's going to scold me or fire me. But instead, he asked about her life and how she's doing. And for the first time in her life, maybe years, she felt like someone actually wanted to know her and what made up of her. As she spoke, her tears fell freely, words spilling out that she hadn't shared with anyone for a long time. And he listened to her, quietly without judgment. Vivian didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if things would go back to how it's been recently. The fear, everything. And maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. She had no idea how that change would come or what it would cost her. After a week or so, Simeon called Vivian over to the living room and said to her, "Vivian," he said, his voice calm, but there was something in it that made her heart fear for the next thing he'd say. "I want you to go out with me today. So, there's a party tonight at my friend's place. I am actually going, so I don't know if you would like to come." Vivian froze. "A party? But why me, sir?" She hesitated, but he simply told her, he just wants to go with her. Maybe if she doesn't want to come, that's fine. She thought of refusing. She didn't know why he was asking her. And she has never been to parties like that. And honestly, she didn't feel like she belonged in his world. But something in his calmness, in the way he looked at her, made her pause. And before she could stop herself, she found herself saying, "Okay, I'll go with you, but I'd have to finish up with work." But he insisted she just let work be for now. The drive there was silent. He didn't say much, and neither did she. She stared out of the window, watching the lights of the city blur past them. She kept thinking about how much her life has changed in the last few months. From losing her home, her marriage, her sense of safety, to now sitting beside a man like Simeon, someone she barely knew, someone she didn't even know she could trust. When they got to the party, Vivian felt so nervous. Everything was so bright. The place was beautifully decorated with flowers and chandeliers. It was so overwhelming. People were laughing, dancing, drinking, enjoying themselves in ways she had forgotten existed. She stuck close to Simeon, trying to feel invisible, just to remind herself that she was just a guest, just someone who didn't belong here. Meanwhile, Simeon didn't let her fade into the background. He introduced her to his friends, and they looked shocked. They knew him as a man who didn't want to get involved with women, a man who kept his distance from relationships. And here she was, standing beside him, suddenly introduced as his fiancée. Her heart raced, and she could feel her cheeks burning. She had to play along. She had no choice, I mean. They mingled, danced, they laughed a little, and for a moment Vivian felt lighter than she had in months. Simeon's hand brushed hers, and she felt a jolt of something she hadn't expected. His friends were shocked, whispering to each other, but he didn't seem to care. He had her there, beside him, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. After the party on the drive back, Vivian finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind the entire night. "Why? Why did you introduce me like that?" she asked softly, her voice almost breaking. He slowly pulled the car to a nearby corner on the road. Then he just smiled. His smile said something she couldn't quite name. Then he looked at her and said, "I like you, Vivian. I'm not trying to rush you into anything or asking you for anything right now. I've seen how you work, how you talk, how you do things, and I'd be at a loss if I let you go." His words hit her in a way she didn't expect. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she couldn't speak. All she could do was let them fall. And then he came closer. He kissed her. Just a gentle kiss, but it carried so much meaning, so much reassurance. She couldn't say anything. She just cried. And at that moment, she felt safe, like no one had ever made her feel before. After that night, things started to change. Simone made her stop working as his cleaner. She would stay over sometimes. Everything felt natural, like a small comfort after everything she had been through. She began to trust him. She began to feel happy, something she hasn't felt in a long while now. But life has a way of surprising when one least expects it. One morning, Vivian noticed something strange. Her body was beginning to feel different, and she didn't pay attention to it. She has missed her period. At first, she tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was stress, it was exhaustion, but deep down she knew she has to check. And when she did, the test showed that she was 2 weeks pregnant. Vivian cried. She couldn't stop crying, not tears of pain or regret, but tears of joy. Tears that had been held back for years. Tears that were finally free. She realized something in that moment. She was finally going to be a mother. After everything she had been through, she could finally hold a child in her hands. When she told Simeon, his joy was uncontainable. He laughed, cried, hugged her tightly, and held her hands as if he never wanted to let go. That moment, the realization that she was finally going to be a mother, brought her a kind of happiness she had thought she would never feel again. That night, as she lay in bed with Simeon, she thought about all the years she had lost, all the pain she had endured. And then she thought about Simeon and the way he had slowly brought her back from despair, the way he had made her feel seen, valued, loved. She smiled through her tears, holding her growing belly, and whispered a small prayer of thanks to God. Simeon never treated her differently, but every now and then she would catch him staring at her. Just for a moment, one before she would quickly look away. She tried to ignore it, thinking it was nothing, but deep down she felt seen. Not in the way she had ever been seen before, but truly, quietly, and with care. They spent that night talking, laughing, crying, and dreaming about the future. For the first time in years, Vivian felt secure, safe, and truly happy. The past, the betrayals, the losses, the pain, didn't feel like a burden to her anymore. She had found love again, and she had found hope. She looked at Simeon, holding her belly, feeling the tiny movements of life growing inside her, and whispered, "Thank you." He smiled, brushing her hair gently from her face, and said softly, "You're safe with me, babe." And she believed him. Because finally, after all the hurt, after all the losses, Vivian had found love, she had found hope, and she had found herself again. Life will test you in ways you never expected. Sometimes the pain you go through is not because you are not good enough. It is not because you are weak, and it is not because you are the problem. Vivian thought she was the problem. She thought maybe she wasn't enough, maybe she wasn't worthy. But the truth is this: sometimes people betray you because of their own choices, not because of your flaws. And sometimes what breaks you is actually what saves you. If Michael had not cheated, she might have stayed in a marriage where she was slowly losing herself. If she had not walked away, she would never have discovered her strength. I mean, sometimes losing something is the only way to find something better. Another thing is this: never let pressure push you into becoming someone you are not. Don't allow family pressure, your friends, society pressure, or expectations to destroy your peace. A child, marriage, money, all these things are important, yes, but your dignity, peace, and your self-worth are more important. Kindness is not weakness. Simeon was told he was too nice, but in the end, it was that same kindness that healed someone else. Never change your good heart because someone failed to value it. So if you are watching this and you feel broken, rejected, or replaced, don't rush your healing. Don't beg to stay where you are not valued. And don't lose yourself trying to prove your worth to anyone. Sometimes the closed door is a protection, and sometimes the life you cry about losing is the very life that is making space for something better. Before you leave, if this story touched your heart, please like and comments on this video. It helps this message reach a wider audience. Share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to African Tales by Victoria for stories that heal, uplift, and remind us that kindness and love is still possible.